I'm really concerned about Russian government interference in our elections.
Perhaps not since the Cold War has a U.S. presidential election campaign been so fixated on Russia.
He's also a guy who annexed Crimea, invaded Ukraine, supports Assad in Syria, supports Iran, and according to our intelligence community, probably is the main suspect for the hacking of the DNC computers.
Well, nobody knows that for a fact.
Along with the well-established geopolitical differences between the U.S. and Russia, cyber war and cyber politics now feature prominently in the rhetorical battle being waged on the campaign trail.
We've never had a nominee of one of our major parties urging the Russians to hack more.
Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing.
A series of data breaches throughout the 2016 presidential race have stirred controversy and have raised eyebrows along with questions over the line between transparency and treachery.
Разве это важно? Кто взломал? Там вот эти какие-то там данные из штаба, предвыборного штаба госпожи Клинтон. Разве это важно?
A hard battle fought and won, but the victory lap cut short. Documents released by WikiLeaks suggested DNC insiders were coordinating political strategy with Hillary Clinton's campaign, to the dismay of her rival for the Democratic presidential nomination, Bernie Sanders, and his millions of supporters. WikiLeaks is the same group that dumped a trove of emails from Hillary Clinton's private email server in March. WikiLeaks and its founder, Julian Assange, say they're dedicated to radical transparency. But some critics say the organization has functioned as a de facto Donald Trump super PAC. WikiLeaks has not, for instance, published any information regarding Donald Trump's tax returns,
We'll bring our jobs back.
which he has so far refused to make public. While who exactly is doing the hacking is unclear, some analysts point to a state actor.
I would expect that one or two random hackers could penetrate someone like that, but they wouldn't be able to throw 30 people at the task of going through 10,000 files the way an intelligence agency could.
And with Donald Trump appearing so cozy with Vladimir Putin, a murky theory has emerged. Is Russia working with WikiLeaks to meddle in this presidential election? Russian hackers are also suspected of targeting reporters at the New York Times and other U.S. news organizations. And perhaps most troubling are breaches into Arizona and Illinois state voter registration systems in June and July. Even without concrete conviction as to who exactly is behind the keyboard, there's rising concern that foreign actors could effectively manipulate the race for the American presidency. Randolph Nogel, The Newsmakers.
I'm joined from Washington, D.C. by William Courtney, the former U.S. ambassador to Kazakhstan and Georgia, and now a senior fellow at the RAND Corporation. Thanks so much for joining us, Ambassador Courtney. Do you believe, sir, that there is sufficient proof that Russia is interfering in this 2016 U.S. presidential election?
Yes, statements by officials and by respected private companies that monitor hacking have all indicated the Russians are involved. Just this morning, Secretary of State John Kerry released an interview in which he said that both President Obama and he have raised this concern with Russian leaders.
Okay, so let me put it to you this way then. If they are they interfering just to disrupt the election or to hand it to Donald Trump?
Probably at the beginning, the focus was more on disrupting the election. The Russians have just conducted yesterday a parliamentary election, which has a lot of shortcomings, even though administratively it was conducted better than some in the past. But the Russian authorities want to show that the U.S. election system is chaotic and perhaps even rigged. So this hacking was part of an effort to do that. What has changed in the last week is that Donald Trump has moved up in the polls now closer to Hillary Clinton, and they're running even in some areas. So this may raise a question whether the Kremlin will perceive a new opportunity now to extend its interference, possibly to tip the balance for Donald Trump.
If it was the Russians behind the DNC hack, Colin Powell's colorful email hack. How much damage do you really think has been done to the prestige of the United States and, I guess, to the personalities of those involved?
Not so much to the prestige of the United States, but the main issue is for the Russians is, are they achieving a result that they wanted to achieve? For example, there's so much suspicion in the United States about Russian motives, and this goes from everything to the annexation of Crimea, the invasion of eastern Ukraine, to its activities in Syria, to its internal crackdown at home, that the evidence of Russian interference in the hacking, if you will, has probably caused some benefit to Mrs. Clinton because a lot of people are suspicious of Russia, but perhaps also to Donald Trump. So it's not clear at this point who has benefited on that.
Some go a step further, they go a bit deeper, and they suggest that Julian Assange and WikiLeaks serve Russian interests and might be involved in this. Does that sound like a conspiracy theory to you, or does it sound as if it has validity?
Well, it certainly is the case that WikiLeaks has released information that the Russians have wanted to have released. The hacking of the emails by Russian authorities and then their release through WikiLeaks suggests that WikiLeaks has been, if you will, a witting accomplice to this activity.
Shyla Nelson, who's a co-founder of the civil rights group Election Justice USA, has been quoted recently as saying, the narrative that somehow foreign operatives would be hacking in order to interfere with our national elections is not only unsubstantiated, it's reckless and incendiary. Can you see where Shyla Nelson is coming from in the absence of smoking gun proof?
There's been enough smoking gun proof. If the President of the United States, the Secretary of State are warning the Russian leaders about this, if respected private companies that monitor hacking are reporting that the Russians are involved, and these organizations have reported that two specific Russian organizations, Russian military intelligence, the GRU, and Russia's civilian intelligence, the FSB, are involved. So there's pretty much quite a bit of evidence in the case.
How would you say this affects the efforts of the United States in Russia's neck of the woods, in the countries, for example, that you served as ambassador to? How would it affect the dynamics vis-a-vis Georgia and other countries?
Those countries have more direct threats from Russia. The Russians occupy two separatist regions of Georgia, Abkhazia, and South Ossetia, and of course the Russians have invaded Ukraine. So from those country standpoints, those are much more serious threats than what they see in terms of Russian hacking of U.S. elections.
If the president called you into the room and you were at the table and he asked you, Ambassador Courtney, how should I respond to the Russians threatening and interfering in our elections, how would you advise him? What would you advise him to do?
Well, the most effective response is to strengthen the defenses of organizations, because it's not only the Russians who would potentially have the capability to hack U.S. election systems. The U.S. Secretary of Homeland Security, Jay Johnson, has proposed that U.S. election systems be brought into a program to protect U.S. critical infrastructure. That won't be accomplished by the elections in November, but as a long-term effort, it could help protect those organizations. Also, states and localities in the United States conduct elections, not the national government. So they have been forewarned and are taking really extra measures now to improve their cybersecurity. In addition, the United States may propose some actions response to Russian hacking that could involve sanctions or other things. I don't think economic sanctions are appropriate now. There are quite a few economic sanctions on Russia because of its aggression in Ukraine, but there may be some more specific measures that could make sense.
Would you advise him to fight hacking with hacking?
That really depends on the context. It'd be hard to make a recommendation about that without knowing more.
Okay, Ambassador William H. Courtney, good to talk to you. Thank you very much for joining us.